Okay, so welcome along to another edition, another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee, and I'm flying somewhat solo today. My normal co-host, Blake Russell, is not with me, but I've got a special group, friends. This is coming to you, wow, I wanted to say live, but it's not really live. You're going to hear this like a week later. So this is coming to you delayed from the great state of Arkansas. And I have some really special people in the room that I'm going to introduce to you in just a moment. This is a blast from the past. Stick around for this episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. All right, so as I said, I've got some really special people in the room, and I'm going to do my best. So by the time you listen to this, I'm going to do my best to dig around and find some pictures, because there's some classics, and we passed them around not that long ago over text message. But sitting to my right are two guys that I've known since high school, Mr. Blaine Stewart and Mr. Brad Latson. Blaine lives in St. Louis and coordinates all 18-wheeler transportation worldwide.
In the nation, that's right.
Yeah, in the entire country and everywhere else. So when all those trucks you see on the road, that's his fault. Okay. And Brad is an architect, so all the data that we use on our phones and all that kind of fun stuff, all the data in the world, that's how much I know about data. Brad builds buildings where data lives. So some two really important, I mean, if these guys weren't doing their jobs, the whole thing goes down. So, but these guys have been my friends since high school, and we're part of this really big life change, big turnaround for me that you've heard me talk about. But the most special guest, sorry guys, the most special guest is sitting right across from me, and his name is Larry Grayson, and you've heard of Larry before. Larry was the worship pastor. That wasn't what you were called then, but that's the name we use now. But he was the worship pastor at First Baptist Church in Louisville, which is where I went to church in high school. More importantly, he was the guy that took on the unbelievably crazy task of trying to shape and mold the character of a group of young men that were going haywire, and took us into his home, and every Tuesday night with cookies and milk, and I think we said vanilla Coke, would bring us in and answer our questions and challenge us, and was a huge part of our lives being what they are today. Larry just retired / isn't really retired, and we've been talking about that. He just retired after serving 10-ish years in the Arkansas State Convention and mentoring and assisting worship leaders and all over the state of Arkansas. And he is currently well, this is where I said I was going to mess it up. He's currently working at Wichita, and he's helping develop
Worship studies.
Yeah. So he's developing a course. This is so cool. Developing a course, helping people understand the practical ins and outs of worship ministry at Wichita. And so anyway, welcome along, guys. That's a long introduction. There's three people sitting, so sorry for the long introduction. But these are some really special people. Welcome along to the podcast. How you guys feeling? We good? We're
doing great. So glad to be here. Yeah.
It's so
I can't
cool.
believe this happened. Really, it's so cool.
Yeah, I just keep pinching myself that we're actually doing this. This kind of all started. Actually, Sweet Tea and Coffee was a little bit of a catalyst to even this trip. But I was just thinking about if I want to spend some time, go somewhere, do something during sabbatical, like who are the people that I want to take time to see? And Larry was on that list, and so it happened to be that in his busy world he was around. And then I reached out to these guys and thought, man, how cool would it be if we could all come? And their schedules were open, so here we are in Larry's living room and telling all the stories from the past. So this has been, just for some time's sake, this has been about 20 years ago that you took us all in. Man, give us a little, we kind of all smirk, I'm sure, when we think about who we are and what we were doing and at that point in our lives. But Blaine's brother I think I'm right about this. Blaine's brother was he's old. Blaine has an older brother that was in a group like this before us and kind of set the way. So, Larry, how did it even start where you were gathering these groups of young men and mentoring them? I mean, where did that even begin? What was the catalyst?
Well, all my life, my ministry, I have had a passion for students because I think if we grab our spiritual development during that time, we have a lot better chance of building, a solid foundation. And so for years, I stayed in churches where I could do a combination of worship and student ministry. So I stayed in smaller churches just so I could do that. And then when I left, people thought, "Oh, you're going to miss it so much." Well, I didn't miss it at all because I kept it going, and so we had this, student ministry worship choir at Louisville, and from that, I just thought something more needs to happen. So Brant and Jake and Patrick and I forget who else was in that first group, but we talked about it and decided to start meeting. And I thought, what an opportunity to invest in them. And what you don't get is you guys always talk about me asking you questions and pouring into you. What you don't get is that I gained so much by spending the time with you and learning from you and you challenging and sharpening me. Because you would ask me questions in my mind, I would go like, oh no, I don't know what to say. And, I would just have to seek it out and figure it out. And sometimes I just have to tell you, hey, give me some time to think about that. And I'll get back with you on it the next week. And so it was just a great challenge, but I just saw just an incredible opportunity. And then the guys that God brought, and when you do accountability, it's men on men and women with women, so that you don't, that's the only way you can be really blunt and honest about things. And so when we started this thing, God just brought groups of guys that just blew my mind. That God would give opportunity for us to be together and be honest and be transparent. And there goes the clock chiming.
We have one in our house, and I don't even notice it. But when people who are not familiar with it sit down and it starts dinging behind them, it's always like, what's going on?
Yeah, we have to get 11 chimes in before it stops. So, but anyway, it was a great opportunity, and I just couldn't believe that God kept giving me a chance to pour into guys like you. And to see the transformation in you over those years was just amazing. I mean, you came in just kind of raw and green, and then before you left, it was like you were, in some for your age, you were spiritual giants in a lot of ways because God had just really developed you and changed you. And I was just humbled to get to be a small part of that. It was so fun.
Well, guys, share your perspective because, I mean, most people listening to this have heard kind of my story and how it was just an act of God's grace that Gavin Pappett, shout out to Gavin Pappett, in history class, invited me along to this group. But you guys were in it before that. And you guys have been friends since y'all were in
second grade.
Yeah. So how did it begin? Like, what's your perspective on even, did Larry come to you? Did you come to him? How did you guys get involved? What's that story?
So I wasn't part of the initial ask. I don't know if it came from Brant and his friends or if Larry approached us, but I know that we had a group of guys who we were in the youth group. We were running together. That was our friend group, was based on the church. And we were hungry and ready to start trying to figure out how to, grow in our relationship with Christ. We didn't necessarily know what that meant at the time. It was a formational time for all of us. And we were all kind of excited to do something. And it was easy because it was all of our buddies. We're going to be together anyways. And we were in the choir at the church. So they had the youth choir that started as a freshman, and we had all gone through that. And so Larry was a part of our life through that already. So relationship existed. And then the opportunity to be intentional about something and grow into it really was appealing and something we were happy to dive into. And the thought of accountability when we're all just struggling with the awkwardness of being teenagers and what it is to start forming ourselves into young men. It was a really good time to have something like that and to be able to have someone pouring into us and pouring into each other. I mean, we all three saw each other every day at school. We hung out every day after school. So we were doing life together. And so having something that was a little bit more purposeful and something that connected that in a deeper way was really great, and something that I think all of us were anxious to be a part of. As far as the question of how it started, I don't remember the actual date that we all said, "Hey, we're meeting at Larry's on Tuesday."
But you're saying that it was something that you recognized a need for. I mean, you were hungry for it.
It was a group of, I think, 3 or 4 of us that had said we want something, and I think that
So me, you, and Gavin
probably. But I remember, and I think the word you used of intentional was really good. Like, we wanted something that was intentional, and then we also wanted really a leader to help us figure things out. And that's where it really started. Was, we had each other, and we all knew that we were pursuing God in whatever that looked like in that situation, but we wanted to be more intentional together, and again, holding each other accountable and learning from each other with the help of a leader, someone that was more mature than we were,
But just barely.
Just barely. That's a description that doesn't come my way a lot of times.
Set low for us on maturity.
Larry, so man, take us into just what is it like as this herd of young men piles in your living room every Tuesday? I mean, I imagine that you have to have a Holy Spirit given imagination for who God has called these young men to be in order to deal with where they were in that moment. I mean, again, our church knows this, and I've shared this a bunch, but I came into this group an absolute disaster. My life was a wreck and spinning out of control in terms of me trying to figure out. Deep down, I knew who I was, that God had called me to himself, and that meant something, but that actually playing out was really, really messy at the time. And I'm sure all of us kind of had those moments, and you saw that version of our lives. What is the mentality that you've got to have in order to see that kind of thing through, in order to not go, this is beyond repair? What kind of perspective do you feel like you had, or were you even aware of what kind of perspective even at the time that you needed to have in order to do that well?
I don't know that I actually thought about a perspective, but the bottom line is, as I look back, bottom line is you have to have an authentic, genuine love for people, which has to be our walk with Christ anyway. It doesn't matter what we're doing. You have to just authentically care about people. And the other thing is, I just know that if we don't deal with these, I see such great potential in you. If we don't deal and face and be these things and be honest with each other, what's the alternative? The alternative is that you guys live messed up lives, and your marriages fall apart, and God doesn't use you in the church like He's using you now, and so there's really no choice except to do that. And I looked at it as more of a great honor to pour into people's lives. I didn't consider myself wise or having answers to things. In fact, there are times that I was asked things that I thought, oh wow, and so I didn't consider that I was just honored to be along for the ride, really, because that was part of what God said, hey, let's do this. And I want it to be fun. I want it to be trustworthy. In fact, that, if you remember, that was a huge deal. It took us a while, but everything that was said there, assuming there was nothing life-threatening or those kind of things, but everything that was said there stayed there, and it always did. And that's what made accountability work, is you could say anything. And I've developed a philosophy of life that whatever you say to me, I'm not going to be shocked. And so I just hear it, and it's like, okay. The bottom line is, sometimes I hate that. Sometimes wow, that hurts for you and that kind of thing. But the bottom line is, okay, but God's in this. There's an answer for this. God's got a plan for this. His grace is more. His forgiveness is more. His restoration is more. So let's figure it out. Let's start the journey and make it happen. And I think the thing that there is no such thing as an instant fix. I think that was a lot of our journey for all those, is that it just took time to figure those things out and to go on the journey together. And that's what it really was. It was us just going on a journey together. And I can't, like I say, you guys are so significant to me in my life because you enhanced my journey by those days, those Tuesday nights. You enhanced my life by the cookies too. But anyway.
Yeah, and decreased your budget because that was
did
we
some
ate a
damage.
bunch of cookies. I'm just gonna say that was.
Oh, yeah, you walk in the door. Well, I was, for those who don't know, Otis Spunkmeyer had those frozen cookie dough chunks at that point in time that we could get. I can't find them anymore. Thank goodness.
I think we put them down. I think we literally ate all
put them
that
out of
they
business.
made.
You think that's what it was? Yeah. But anyway, these guys would all walk in the door and they'd go to the fridge first, and it's as unhealthy as it might have been, and they'd grab the Otis Spunkmeyer frozen chunks and sit down and just start chowing down on those things. And then we'd put some in the oven that would be cooking for us to have when we got through. So this may have been a spiritually healthy thing, but physically it was the most unhealthy thing we could have ever done in our lives.
And we'll die early but live forever. Is that
Yeah. But anyway, and so, I just had a vision for caring about investing in other people. I don't know, and investing in you guys. When I got there and I saw you, I thought, okay, student ministry is not over. This is just a different approach to it, and a deeper approach to me than I'd had when I was in charge of the whole group of students at my church, and that was my ministry. This is a much more impactful time of investing in individuals' lives, and I love it that you guys trusted me to talk to me. I was older. You could have just got, you old man, don't like you. You could have had that attitude, but you were always so just open and honest. And I think God did that in your heart too, to give you that willingness to be transparent. I mean, you told me things that, hindsight, you probably would look back and think, why did I tell him that? But it's because God was in it. Plus the fact, I think you knew, and I think that's key for us in church today. I think you knew that love for you and care for you was unconditional.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that I'm really good at that in all areas of life, but where you guys were concerned, that was just very true.
Yeah. Yeah, I think exactly what you said. You set an environment where sharing the deeper things was possible. It was an environment of care. We knew we were cared for. We knew we were loved. No, never a second that we maybe thought otherwise. And then we knew it was a place that was safe and that we could trust. You created an environment where, like you said, nothing was going to leave, and we can open up and talk. And I think those two things, it created a very natural sharing of deeper things.
Yeah. Well, it just, isn't that what the church is supposed to be, though? Maybe not as in depth as we were with each other because of the trust factor, but if we just want all nice and healthy people all the time, we're not a church. I mean,
Right.
we've got to take
good.
in people like us that are just ragamuffins, that are just people that, oh my goodness, and we got to love them unconditionally and make it a safe place for them.
Yeah.
Now, the depth that we went, that's not for everybody in every environment, but find a group of people with that. That's just so good. Brad, I think I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. And reflecting on it now as we sit here, it's one of the things that I know came of it was that we were also in this small group, in this accountability setting, we were growing so deep, we were also being empowered. And I remember that the several of us within the youth group, which was larger, it was a big youth group, that we became leaders in that group. We had no fear in that group. We were able to pour into it and make it a home for us and a home for others. And I think the empowering to just have the boldness to go own this youth group as it was ours was part of that relationship that we found home, we found community, we found something that was deep and meaningful, which helped us to be able to let that expand beyond the walls of that small group. And as kind of looking back, I realized how impactful that was, that we were emboldened to lead at such a young age. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is maybe a bit of a I should have done this at the beginning. But I think one of the things I'd love to talk about at some point is kind of reflecting as you look at your life now, what things can you look back and trace back to that season of our lives, and so I'd love to get there, but give us a snapshot of your life and family, and like what does your life look like now? Because I think that's important to set the stage for how even that season has equipped you as the men you are today. So I don't know, like where I kind of gave you brief spiel of what you do for work. But give us a snapshot into your life now, family and work, and what all you're doing now.
Yeah, I am. I have 2 kids, as you know. 2 kids, 6 and 4, in St. Louis, and working in logistics, which is as luxurious as it sounds. and we have spiritually, or more spiritually, it's, we have a church family that we love. And I think that, not to get too much into the direction that you wanted to go, but
What's okay? Jump in.
but no, I mean,
I
think that where we're at today, our family, is largely due to how God worked through Larry, and formed this group where we could hash out things, and we could, it wasn't Larry ever saying, "You guys, this is right, this is wrong. Here's what you need to do to be good Christians." It was very centered around, let's figure this out, admit your struggles, and let's have a conversation about it, a semi-debate and everything. And I think that a lot of debates, but I think that is ultimately that picture of working out your salvation is what has kind of prepared me, and then in turn my family, to be where we're at today.
That's great.
Yeah. What about you, Brad?
Yeah, so I have 2 kids also, and a wonderful wife. So the kids are 3 and 5, and we live in Dallas, like Kendall had said. So I think how it plays out kind of for me is that early on I had learned the value of mentorship and discipleship, and then sought that out in college as well. So found a similar relationship to the small group Larry relationship, where we found a mentor in college who poured into me, and it was able to continue the growth in my spiritual walk. And where that really hit an intersection was when I met my wife, and she was at a point in her life where she knew the Lord, but wasn't necessarily walking with him. And when we met, there was a hunger on her end that I was able to say, "Hey, I kind of know how this works." And we were able to reintroduce her to kind of the fullness of what God had for both of us moving forward. And that common thread of kind of the Lord being part of our lives early brought us together so quickly, and created bonds that were above just kind of the surfacey dating stuff of college. And being able to bring her into kind of those discipleship relationships and introducing her to the family and community that we had created. I know that propelled her into her spiritual journey, and just absolutely set her on fire for the Lord. It's some of those things I can see in the long run, this chain of events that happened in my life, to be able to bring her alongside of that and watch her just absolutely catch fire because of it. I won't say that it wouldn't have happened, but it's really cool that God orchestrated it in such a way that those things aligned, and when they came together, it just made all the more, which kind of a God thing, go and make more out of what he's already doing.
Yeah. It's almost, it's a question I'd love to go, okay, point to specific things that you would say in that season when we were young that have impacted you now. It's almost an impossible question to answer, because the approach that Larry took, which I think is the appropriate approach in discipleship, is character formation. It wasn't, how many facts can we know? And even, Blaine, you mentioned debates. That was a big part of those Tuesday nights. And you don't realize it then, but what's Larry teaching us to do in those moments? He's teaching us to think biblically. He's teaching us to wrestle and be uncomfortable in some things, and dialogue through those things in a community where that's a safe place to do that. And he wasn't afraid of us being wrong. How many times, oh my goodness, how many times in that room would we say things, I'm sure, it was so off base. I'm sure the pastor in you is just cringing, but giving us space to argue, giving us space to wrestle it out. And so it's like, the point is, I think what both of you are saying and what I would say is equally true in my life is that it's an impossible question to answer, because what we gained in that season is so deeply embedded in the character of who we are. It's not like, oh, I learned how to ride a bike, and I can point specifically to that. It's the part of the fabric of who I am. And so it comes out as I pastor, it comes out as I'm a husband, it comes out as I'm a father, because it's who I am. And that's a powerful statement to what real formation and discipleship is supposed to look like.
And we're about to, so we started this when we were 15 and 16, so sophomores in high school. And so we had 2.5, 3 years of just foundational kind of formation of who we are in God, creating a biblical worldview as we're about to get thrust into the world. So we all went off to different places, to college, and the training wheels come off pretty quick, and you realize real fast what you believe, what you hold dear, when you have no one looking over your shoulder to say, hey, this is the person that you have to be now. And so to spend that time and to go through that, just like I said, the foundational things of learning how to think of what we're going through a biblical lens. Also, to learn how to get into the Word. That was so much for me of what we were going through, was you were leading us through that, in that it's like, okay, here's this curriculum. Here's a book we're going through. Hey, guys, here's 10 verses. Go memorize them. A lot of times it felt like homework, but at the end of the day, you're like, oh, that verse is in me now. That verse is something that I can recall at an instant, and I know that it applies here, it applies there. So we were getting set up to be able to go and kind of stand our own in a different scenario where we didn't have the insulation that we were kind of formed in of this small group. So I think it was the timing of it really set us up to be well equipped to go out and kind of continue our relationship with God, and also be ready to defend against all the world was about to throw at us.
And Larry wasn't playing with those memory verses. Don't come in this house and not know your stuff.
Shoot, we had a flip
He
book
wasn't
that was
playing. You ain't going on that trip if you don't know your
The whole thing of scripture memory that's so important is that, when we have struggles in our life, and you just think about those struggles, then all you do is focus on those struggles. Yeah. And so you have to have something. The whole replacement theory is what I refer to it. You've got to be able to replace those thoughts, those actions with something. Yeah. And so that's where scripture, comes into mind. And if you've got it in your heart, you can't go look it up every time because you're driving the car or because you're out of town. You have to have it in your heart that you can spew it and counteract those things that come your way. And you got to know why you believe what you believe. Yeah, that's the thing that scares me. So many, even now at Ouachita, teaching college students, they believe what they believe because my pastor and my parents told me this is it. Okay, you don't know what you believe if that's the case. Yeah. Because when crisis comes, you're going to think, I don't know if that's really true or not. But when you think and scrutinize and challenge and ask questions, and God's okay with questions, and so when you ask those hard questions, then it becomes your belief and your direction for your life. Then it's really cool, and it helps develop who you are when no one's looking, and that's who you really are.
For me, that group, and I don't know what y'all's experience was, but for me it was a denomination shift. So I grew up Methodist. The first time I ever interacted in a Baptist world was with this, and it wasn't because I was, having some profound theology shift or anything. It was because of a girl I was dating. But so I became Baptist through a dating relationship. But it was my introduction, and I was having this conversation with a really good friend of mine the other day. I had never seen up close and personal with my peer group. I'd seen it with my parents, I'd seen it with others, but with my peer group, I'd never seen spiritual disciplines from my peers. And that was one of the things that when I stepped into that group, and again, I came in late, so these guys were already going for over a year. I think you'd been going. And I stepped in late, and I saw you reading the Bible every day. I saw you, and talking about it. in a way that it was part of your life. I saw you memorizing scripture. I saw these spiritual disciplines that I had never taken seriously. And that was one of the things that was so shocking to me. And I think that was terrifying because that wasn't part of my life, but also really drew me in is how serious all of you seemed to take your walk with the Lord. And yet at the same time, I could relate to you, and you weren't like these super Christians. I mean, we were having real conversations, but you had a hunger and a drive. So for me, that was the catalyst. That was the beginning point. That was for me when spiritual disciplines became a serious integrated part of my life and are still so today, it was just crazy. I mean, that was that part of my life where those now still exist. What was y'all's, you grew up kind of in that world. Did it function in that role for you? Was it already part of your life? How did that group really, my question, I'll get around to it, is, how did that group influence your daily habits and practices of following Jesus?
Yeah, I think for me, so I grew up in the church, but I wouldn't say it was a standard practice for me to wake up in the morning, read the Bible, and follow those disciplines. So I think that was, at the beginning, that was really a large piece of the desire to want to have an accountability group, to have to come in here and say, hey, I think we used to go around the horn and say, 2 out of 3 days, whatever, or 2 out of 5 days, whatever. We used to kind of report on how we were doing, just to again hold each other accountable. So I think that I didn't have that discipline before. I think that a lot of that came as a result.
But it wasn't a spiritual checklist,
Right?
That I accomplished that, because if you do that, there's no value in that. You know, in fact, it becomes almost very arrogant, pharisaical type thing. If I do my checklist.
Yeah.
But it was just I had my quiet time with God. I had it 5 times this week with Him, and I'm telling you, it made a difference. So it was that encouragement and challenge,
Absolutely,
that those private times with God were meaningful, not a religious checklist.
And I think that we saw that manifested because we were never shy about saying when we struggled. So if it's a checklist, then I would expect, these bunch of kids, they're going to come in and say, hey, I just remember that a week has 7 days. So, if it's strictly a checklist, then you're going to say, 7 out of 7, nailed it, and go on. But we were completely fine saying, no, I did horribly this week, because it wasn't a checklist to us, and it was something that we truly valued and we wanted to be better at.
Well, I had total opposite. Well, in some ways, total opposite perspective. I was terrified when I came in and saw that. That was terrifying. The expectation
We wanted you to be.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
No, and I was, and I think it was a good thing. And I think the shock of that and the intimidation. I mean, I was extremely intimidated by that. What ended up happening over time was, first of all, it shocked me into taking it seriously, and I had never done that. But the second thing was that over time, and the way that it was discussed in that group, the way that, if you were, you mentioned 2 out of, so if you said 2 out of 7, you were never going to be beat up in that group. You were never going to be beat up in the group. And I watched how, okay, this isn't something that I have to be afraid of. This isn't a checklist. This is so crucial and so important that we're going to talk about it. But it's never going to be a club to beat me up. This is supposed to be part of the joy-filled life of following Jesus. And that's where I learned that. And it was terrifying at first, but then stepping into it and being in a group where it was never used as a club was I think the two things that kind of allowed it to be birthed into my life as a healthy, wonderful part of my life, and has been for that entire time now.
Yeah. And then when you came in, so we had already been pretty well established.
Right.
So several of us had known each other for 10 plus years already.
Yeah, since you were in diapers.
Yeah, so pretty much. And so we already had community. And so in the community came the trust and came the common goal of the betterment. And then you kind of had to come brave the strangers because when you came to it, I don't know that all of us were even more than acquaintances. And so,
No, which was what was so odd about that I was even invited.
yeah. And so,
just God's
but as we went
grace.
through it, I think we quickly became fast friends. And part of that was that our relationship wasn't just the typical friendship. It was the friendship with the overlay of, this Christ-centered life that we're all trying to figure out, along with all the fun and goofing off and shenanigans of high school. And so overlapping those things and then realizing that community makes this thing really work, and that's how it's designed to be, and that working through this relationship in community and learning about God together is kind of how the whole thing's designed. So,
and I love it that you just talked about shenanigans and stuff, because that's hilarious. To me, it's so far we may have sounded like to somebody listening that we were almost serious and we were
Watch
always a bunch of monks or something. I don't mean that disrespectful to monks, but anyway, that we were always this real serious people, and we laughed our heads off so much of the time. Just start laughing and we couldn't stop. And I think that's a big part of it too, is that you can't take yourself too seriously. You take it seriously, but you don't take yourself too seriously that you can't figure things out and move on, figure out a way to make things happen. So laughing together is a big part of it too. There's got to be joy. If there's not, then what are we doing? Even in the midst of turmoil and tough times, there's got to be joy.
I'm sure we tested your laugh button where at some point you were like, okay, this is enough.
Oh, I love it. But anyway, yeah. So, well, you guys, last night when we had dinner, you were telling me stories of things that y'all did that you're now confessing that I didn't know about. But anyway, I love it. It's funny.
I think that's a great segue, Larry. I think we confessed last night to this, but I do feel just as a pastoral duty to confess to our congregation this, the sin of sneakiness. But I think it's just good to tell this story. So we were we gotta find pictures. But if you hear this, and man, if you hear this and for some wild reason you have any pictures of these moments, please send them to me. But we were shepherds in the. Now, what would this was like the church-wide Christmas play? This wasn't
Festival
just something,
Christmas. Yeah, it's when
this wasn't just a youth thing.
Oh, no, it was church-wide. It was involving,
goodness.
At that point in ministry, we had choir orchestra, and we had drama, staging, as all part of it would come together. Yeah.
Lots of hard work and hours.
Kind of makes me feel bad about what we did.
Yeah, that's so what we did. So we were shepherds, and we had rehearsed. We had it down. We knew who we were. We were embracing it.
No
but
speaking
Blaine,
parts.
I'm going to throw Blaine under the bus here. I think Blaine had this, right? I mean, Brad can jump in with me, but Blaine had this drive to find all secret spaces inside of this church. It was a good-sized church, and so there's all sorts of little nooks and crannies and, places you get into. And the worship center ceiling, I mean, it's just massive. And there was what is it called, a catwalk? So there's the catwalk up on the top, and I remember it being kind of a point of emphasis for you, Blaine, for quite some time, and figure out how do we get up there. Well, Christmas rehearsals offered our role as shepherds was quite brief, so it offered a good bit of time for us to experiment and to wander around. And it actually came that, and I need your perspective on this, because I think there was one door that we knew of but hadn't tried. And the night that we decided to try it was not a rehearsal, was not a time where we're just randomly up at the church playing sanctuary ball, which is another story. But it was the actual night of the Christmas play, and that's the night. While the play is going on, mind you, that's the night that we decide we're going to test that door. Blaine, I think you should maybe grab the story from there. And you got.
Oh, I just want to make a quick clarification on this because it betters the story.
Don't defend yourself.
No, we had found the catwalk during rehearsal because the catwalk was great fun, but it was inside the bounds of the church and we could see everything happening. What we found on the night of the play was the roof access hatch.
That's what it was. Okay, so the roof. Okay, so here we go. So Blaine leads us all into mischief. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how I got wrangled in as the leader of this, but
As the leader, you wrangled.
I'll take
what it was.
responsibility. So we were wandering around the catwalk right above Larry's head as he is
In the worship center, while the
Intensely,
play is going
yeah.
on, shepherds are wandering above people's heads.
I think that's biblical. So we were
What?
So we were wandering around and looking around, trying not to being very careful not to make a lot of noise.
Cat-like.
Yeah, but we found a roof access hatch and managed to climb up. The door was open for some reason and didn't set off any alarms, which was also, I guess, odd.
Remarkable.
But so we got up on the roof.
Security days.
We're very, very nervous that we were going to get locked on the roof and be 3 shepherds sitting on the roof of the church begging to get down.
That would have been the end.
Yeah,
That would have been the end of all of our lives.
So we had very carefully propped the door open and up on the roof, and we hear our cue song to begin walking down the aisle as shepherds.
Time had slipped away from us.
And we were not in costume at this point and had about a 200-yard run with ladders and stairs.
Now, I love the way that Blaine told the story last night because it just perfectly describes. And listen, kids in our youth group, there are no hatches. Don't go looking. I will find you.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, whatever. But so Blaine says there was the hatch. We found the hatch, and it was open. And I just want to imagine for just a quick second, just that moment where we're all standing in front of this hatch, and Blaine pulls it open, and it opens. And the glory that we thought that we had found in that moment, only to be shocked to reality that our song was playing. We had to run back down. But did we miss our cue? For the record, did we miss our cue? No.
Nope.
And to this day, when people talk about Christmas plays at First Baptist Church Louisville, they remember that performance by those 3 shepherds. No, it's not true. But we didn't miss our cue. We got into all sorts of mischief and fun. But yeah, I feel like I needed to confess. Thanks
And
for that.
just for the record, this is the first I had heard of this last night when they confessed it that it had happened. So
That's right.
Anyway,
It took us 20 years to get up the courage to tell Larry what
There's
we
a
had.
certain level of shock on his face when we started
oh,
into
it's
the
such a
story.
great laugh. What are you talking about?
That's so fun. What stories or things as you reflect on that you even just stupid stuff like what we just said. Does anything stand out to you in terms of just things you really remember about us in that group?
No, I just remember that it was just always an adventure with you guys.
Yeah.
It was never the same. It was, even in the midst of your craziness, it was always fun though, and I always knew I could count on you. But I also knew that, I didn't know what was going to be around every corner because there was always a surprise there. Because all 3 of you are very different. Kendall's the in-your-face guy, and Blaine is the curious one that's going to be behind the scenes, moving and sneaking and finding, exploring. Yes, you are. Don't look at me like that.
I got this reputation.
Yeah. And then Brad is the
sealed in the
quiet,
record.
contemplative guy that's just thinking things through and trying to figure out, I wonder what we can do. So anyway, between the 3 of you and even the other guys that were there, they all have very unique individual personalities, Gavin and Justin and the rest of those guys. So you put them all together, and but you 3 were always a trio that never knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, that's a good point. That group, the 3 of us, we were certainly part of that, but there were other guys in that group. It's just remarkable to think how deep friendship was, and that group was able to do what it did and held together for that whole time, that where people didn't move off, and we just were able to have that season together and are still such good friends. So Larry, give us a little bit about what you're, just so the folks back home know what's going on in your world, what you're doing, a couple interims right now and working at Watchdog. What is next, kind of what are you doing now? What is next phase of ministry? You're just recently retired. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's bottom line is, I'm still having fun in life and still grateful for what I get to do. And again, it goes back to my whole calling at the beginning of investing in next gen people, because I see hope and trust and faith in them and what's going to happen. So, while I was at the Arkansas Baptist State Convention working over the years, I realized a shortage of people who were broadly trained enough to be able to do what most churches need in the area of music and worship. So then I decided to retire from there, and Dr. Sales, president at Washita, and Dr. Gerber Dean, they reached out and said, come work for us. And I thought, wow. I didn't know if it would work. I still don't know if it would work. But right now, I've rewritten a new degree, and my goal is in the 4 years with those students is to give them a very practical, hands-on experience so that when they leave Washita, they are really equipped and ready. They still got to grow. I mean, we all do, but they're ready to walk into a local church and know what to do and be able to do it. It's not just a head knowledge. It's a real hands-on practical experience. Yeah. And so, I'm loving it. I've got some incredible students who are just seem to be eager to learn. They're college students, so, enough said there. But they're great students, and I just love the opportunity. And as long as that keeps going, and as long as it seems like that's what God wants for me to do, then, hey, I'll jump in there. Somehow I haven't figured out what this retirement thing's supposed to be.
Never retire.
But anyway, I don't want to retire and sit around.
That's right.
I don't think that's biblical. God never tells us we can just retire and sit around.
That's right. Friends, I don't know if you picked up on that. Surely you did. It's so obvious that what we've covered, and I think this is a good spot to maybe shut this down. But before we came around, way before we came around, you were deeply investing. You were taking the long run. You were stepping alongside people, getting into their life, loving people as God has called you to love them, and changing people's lives by doing that. Before we came around, and you brought us into your home. You fed us thousands of cookies. When we graduated, you took us to a steak dinner and celebrated us. The countless hidden things that nobody ever saw, to prepare for those nights, to ask the hard questions, to research when we had hard questions, to make the phone calls, to show up at our weddings, to hang out, celebrate when our kids are born. Just the thousands of hidden decisions that nobody ever sees. You did on our behalf. Our kids are going to be shaped and changed by that. Our lives have been shaped and changed by that. And we weren't unique. You were doing it before us. You did it for us, and you're still doing it now. Mm-hmm. And regardless of what has changed in terms of vocation and institution and where you're doing it, you have been consistently faithful to God's call in your life, and you've changed so many lives because of that. And it's overwhelming for me to think about how many lives have been changed because of the man that you are. And we came here today to tell you thank you in a public way, but man, just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Who I am, who we are, and I know I speak for them, and the guys that aren't even in this room. Like we even speak for the behalf of all these people that aren't in this room. Thank you, and you're an incredible man, an incredible mentor. A blessing. My life would never have been the way that it is without what God did and through you. And man, thank you. And friends, if you're listening to this, I hope you heard Larry say he didn't come to the table with all the answers. He didn't come having figured it all out. He came with a love for people and an openness to walk with them and be a friend to them as they follow Jesus. And every single one of us can do that. There is not a Christian on planet Earth that is an exception to that rule. Every single one of us can step alongside somebody else and follow Jesus together, and our lives are changed because of that. So thank you. We love you, and on behalf of just everybody that's been impacted by who you are, love you. And I'm gonna break down more, so we're gonna have to shut the podcast down. But you guys, man, thank you guys for traveling all the way here and being here and being part of it. And our friendship has continued throughout all these years. It's just extraordinary. So, yeah, any last words? Anything else to add to that or sign off? Larry, anything else to?
I would just say that you guys coming this weekend and being here has just blown me away. The greatest gift of the year, maybe many years, because you are always my sons in a lot of ways. And you're my family. And like Blaine and I were talking last night, we go years without talking, but all we have to do is get back in the same room and start talking.
Yeah.
And it's like we never left.
Yeah.
Because there's a love and relationship there. And the fact that you took time to come into a little bitty Arkansas here and spend some time in Bryant and my home and just to hang out, it means more than you could ever imagine. Because you say impact, and I don't see that. I see just as an opportunity to serve, and I doubt myself all the time and wonder if it matters, and things like this. It doesn't build my ego. It just lets me know that, good grief, God, you allow me to be a part of something, and it's so humbling. It really is. But I am so proud of you guys and that the men you are, serving in the church, leaders in your churches, godly men in your family, just the impact you have on people. It blows me away, and I'm just so honored to watch your life and to see God do incredible things through you. And I just anticipate that continuing. And I love all of you, and like I say, I'm just so honored and grateful that we got to spend this time together.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't think that God ever promises us that, we're going to directly see the fruits of service. Absolutely. Or the fruits of just doing the mission. But, that's one of the things that I wanted to say too is
it's good.
I'll let Blaine gather, but I just think it's really awesome to see what God does with a yes. So, you don't always see it, but he puts something in. You're like, oh man. Sometimes we're like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds awesome. Sometimes you're like, I don't know if there's value to that. You don't see it, but the value of a yes has just this trickle down. It creates kind of an exponential growth. So the time that you put into us, we've been able to put into others, and it's growing and growing and growing. Continue to reach people, and that every yes that we're able to say to God and what His plan is, and get in alignment with that it just has this crazy kingdom effect where God is building on our yeses, and just we may never see it, but it never stops growing, and it's just there's so much to it.
That's good. You ready to jump back in?
I'm going to try that again.
Okay.
And I wanted to tell you this a couple years ago, but you don't always get to see, what the fruits are, but I just wanted to make sure that you did know, because I think it is cool. Like it's amazing when God does allow you to see the impacts. And so I wanted to make sure that I told you, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, bud. We're all going to be a weepy bunch of just a weepy mess right now as far as all that goes, because it's
good.
But I love it that that God's in our hearts. God brought us together, and to see, like I say, to see where you are today, 20 years later, to sit in a room together,
It's great.
and just think, look at the journeys we've been on, and to look back at that moment up, around those chocolate chip cookies. Who would have thought God would have given us those chances?
Chocolate chip cookies are definitely from God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that.
But anyway,
that profound theological insight of God's blessing of chocolate cookies is where we're gonna shut it down. This has been an unbelievably special recording. Friends, thanks for going along with us today. So appreciate you listening in on our journey. Would love to hear from you. As we've kind of said in previous podcasts, want to hear your stories. If there's somebody that you would say, man, you need to sit down with this person, you need to interview this person, shoot that our way. You can reach us online, in person, by phone, by text, all the different ways you communicate, or you can email us at stc@fredoniahill.org. As I said, man, if you're one of those people from the old days, from the FBC Louisville days, and you have some pictures or memories or whatever, man, please take a couple minutes, shoot those to us. I would absolutely love to hear that. Special thanks to Larry for hosting us here in Arkansas, and to you guys for traveling and making this happen. We will see you guys on the next recording. I won't be back for a few weeks, but we'll see you guys on the next recording. Adios.